kİsikwisem, kİsikukit, kİsikuquat, hunini, hugaki gachi ktunaxa, hugachit yakanuki, hugachit kÐunaxa. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This week, I kind of want to dive into something that a couple people have been asking me, and I can only speak on my community, on my tribe, on where I come from, the ktunaxa people. And, throughout Turtle Island, there are many different ways on how people come about by getting their names given to them. So I can only speak on the region, the area where I come from. And as you know, I'm still a reconnecting Indigenous person because of how heavily residential schools have impacted my family, how they have displaced, our traditional ways, my language, understanding where I come from. And I also didn't grow up my whole life in my community, in the Yakanuki area. When I was about, I believe, 9 or 10, we ended up moving away due to my adopted families, my adopted families, my grandpa and my adopted family, just medical reasons and needing a better doctor with a better care facility. Basically, my whole adopted family picked up and moved away to a little tiny town called Vernon in British Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful summer city. It's in the Okanagan. It's about, I believe it's like 7 hours away from where my roots are from. So I never grew up, I didn't grow up in my area. So there's teachings there, and there's not teachings there, and I'm still trying to learn my ways, learn what it means to be ktunaxa, learn these things and our ceremonies and our ways of life and who we were. And so these are just little bits and pieces, and I ended up getting my name given to me. And anytime something like that happens, these are stories that were told to me. There always has to be some form of ceremony. There always has to be some form of, going in there and whatever type of ceremony it is or whatever you're doing, and praying to kanṭupqa and asking for guidance on these things. And there always has to be witnesses as well. In the Indigenous community, in many Indigenous communities, there's always witnesses when things take place, certain situations happen, naming ceremonies, other kinds of ceremonies and things like that. There always has to be witnesses involved to know that it actually took place, to those knowledge keepers that have been before us, to guide us with the proper protocols on these things. And I had asked my Nasukin, because he also does a lot of ceremonies. He is very active in our community, and it took me a long time. I always wanted a name, but I didn't actually get a name when I was a little boy because of that disconnect. I got a name when I was in my a couple years ago, not too long ago. I got a name, and I felt proud, and the way we did it was we went into sweat. We went into a sweat lodge, and we did it there. And then he said he had prayed on a name, and there was a name that he had this story given to him many years ago, and he just, who I was and what I was kind of doing at the time, it felt like it was a good suit for who I am, and that was that name, kṱunaxa. And then he told me the story behind it, that he was told that goes with that name, because there's always, I know in the ktunaxa ways, when you are given a name, there's always a meaning behind it. There's always something, there's a story, there's a reason why you're given that name, because you pray on it, and they give you, you pray on it, and that name comes to that person that's going to give you that name. And it's kind of an interesting story, because who I am now, it kind of feels like my name is leading me to, my name is leading me throughout life. And the story is, there was a man over 100 years ago in our ktunaxa nation, in our ktunaxa settlements. We had multiple settlements, before pre-colonization, pre-vehicles. This is when we would ride horseback, and this was, the teepee days and the hunter and gathering days. And there was this man, and he was a message deliverer. So he would deliver different types of messages to communities. He would, if something was going to happen, like war was going to break out, he would deliver it to that community, to gather up more warriors to help them out. Or if something else was going to happen, he would deliver these messages to these communities. He would also deliver good messages, And they say that he would run at night because it was more safe. In the story, it doesn't tell me what they mean by it was more safe. But, no matter how far away that community was, us ktunaxa people, our traditional territory is spread out very vast, very far. We go from southern, eastern British Columbia over into Alberta, down into Montana, Idaho, and some in Washington. So just imagine that, pre-vehicle, pre-airplane, having to travel that distance on horseback. It would take days, it would take weeks to get from one settlement to another settlement. And they said, no matter how far away that community was, it always seemed like kṱunaxa would make it there in the flash of an instant, almost like a lightning bolt, Like he would instantly just show up, and he would be there, and people didn't know how he would just get there. And there were stories because his spirit would carry him. His spirit would carry him to these communities to tell them of these things, to spread these messages, to share with other people, to inform them. And that's how I kind of feel like, with social media nowadays, I can spread my message like a lightning bolt in an instant. With the click of a post, whatever I post, that can spread, awareness. That can spread messages to many, many, many communities. Not even on Turtle Island. Some of my content reaches people overseas. And that's pretty amazing that I was thinking about that, and how I am truly grateful to be blessed in this time of life. I have many struggles, especially when it comes to my identity. And I still feel lost at times because of, the colonial ways and the colonial, what's happened to us, right? It's taken a big effect. But I'm truly grateful, though, that I'm in this era of technology, that I can use my pain and my trauma and the things that I had to deal with growing up, deal with, all these things that had happened to me, and the healing that I've done, and the healing I'm consistently doing every day, can help other people do the same thing, can help other people, show them that, no matter how messed up your life is, no matter where you're at, you can change it for the better. You can do it. And sometimes that's all people need, is proof and evidence from someone else doing it. And that's what I'm trying to do. Because sometimes you can't understand what something is until you see it. And I listen to a lot of other, people that are kind of in the realm of what I talk about and what I do, because I kind of think that healing comes from all kinds of forms. And I'm really open-minded on learning new things from other people and other cultures and other ways of life. And I honestly really look up to a person his name is Jay Shetty. He was once a monk. He was actually, lost and troubled as well. And then he became a monk. And then he left, monk school basically, and became a person that is spreading the light of all that hard work he was, he did as being a monk. And he talks about that as well. Like, if he had never ever seen a monk, he would have never known what a monk was. And that's what I look at now, There might be people out there that might not know that life gets better without seeing it in someone else. Because I look back at my life, and I've been through a lot of stuff, and there were some things that I actually never even told my adopted mom or my family for the longest time. When I first moved out to the unceded Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people, I was very heavily into alcohol and partying and drinking, as you may know my story. And at the time, I would rather spend money on booze than have a place to live in. I was sleeping on friends' couches, on friends' grounds. I'd have friends sneak me in. I was, at the time, I was seeing this girl. I started seeing this girl out here, and her mom was, addicted to drugs. So her mom knew where these certain types of drug houses were, and sometimes I would even go there and sleep. And I remember one of the lowest moments of my life, and it was, I didn't have anywhere to stay. I didn't have any, my friends, they couldn't let me stay with them anymore at this time. And it was pouring rain, and it was very cold out. And I don't know if you've ever been to the West Coast, but it was this time of year. Actually, it was roughly like October, November time of year. And I don't know if you've ever been out to the West Coast, even the Pacific Northwest, but the wet and the dampness is a different type of cold. It gets right into your bones because of that moisture in the air. I remember it was a really cold night, and it was pouring rain that night too. So I didn't really want to sleep on the street that night. And that girl I was seeing, I texted her and I said, she gave me an address to go to, and there was like this motorhome outside of this drug house, and she told me where the key was to get into it, because she had talked to her mom, and her mom told her to get it, and so I unlocked it. No one was in there, thankfully, because street workers would bring guys into this motorhome and do what they would do for money. And I knew that because I literally, when I got there, and there was a bed made, there was a condom wrapper and a condom on the ground, and it was like I'd rather sleep on that in there than sleep outside. And I remember, like, I felt so degraded and so lost and so helpless, and I didn't want to touch the bed at all. So I was sleeping in my pants and my hoodie and like my shoes. And I remember, like, I put my hood on and I like tightened it up. Like, I literally did the strings on my hoodie and I tightened it up because I didn't want to like touch the bed. I didn't want to, with my skin. And I went to sleep, and I gotta say, I can't remember, it was in the middle of the night though, this lady with a guy, the street worker, comes in, and she sees me, and he sees me, and she's like, oh sorry, and woke me up. And I was like, damn, man, like, that was a low point in my life. I was homeless, and I was addicted to booze, to the point where I didn't want to pay, for a place. And after that situation, I told myself, I will never, ever get to this level again. No matter what, I need to find a place. I need to start growing up. I need to start putting my money towards at least a decent, warm place to live. And that was, that was one of the most turning points in my life. And I want to show people that no matter what happens in life, you can become a warrior. You can get better. And that's what, that's so cool about my name. And like, I'm very grateful for that. And I also learned that you can have, like, this is in our ktunaxa ways, that you can have more than one name given to you. And I learned this in 2019, pre-pandemic. We have our blacktail ceremony dance. It's a winter dance that we have on July 1st, when the sun goes down, our communities would gather and we would dance all night, and we would give gratitude, and we would give thanks, and we would pray, and we would dance in a circle. And everyone in that community would get this staff, and they would talk, and they would, give thanks for another year on this earth. They would give thanks to ktunaxa. They would say all these things that they were going through. Anytime you go into a ceremony is a judge-free place. And that's what I really love about ceremonies, just because you can let it all out. And no one will judge you there, because it's a judgmental free place. And that's the same thing with sweat lodges. When you pray and you say these things, you're not supposed to bring these things out of ceremony. And that's the same thing with this black-tail dance, this jump dance. You're not supposed to bring these things out that other people talk about. That's between them and ktunaxa. And we would dance and sing all night, and then at the end of it, we have it's kind of a lost society right now, but we would have a society called the Crazy Dogs. And that was our young warriors, that was our young, the young scouts that would go to war, that would go out and hunt and, gather for the community, those Crazy Dogs. And they would bring out the food for everyone to feast. And at this ceremony, I know there may be other ceremonies like this, but everyone would bring their own, it was like a big potluck. Everyone brings their own dish. And everything and we have blankets we'll set down, and nothing can touch the ground, and there's a big long process about it. There's protocols and there's ways, and there's a line that we have to follow. You can't go back on this line, so they have to set it up so that the food goes in a clockwise. So when you go drop the food off on the blanket, you go around and you go back to the food, and then you grab the food in like a clockwise, because you're bringing that food in a good way. You're bringing that food to pray for another abundance year of food and wealth, like health, not money-wise wealth, but wealth in like your health, and a good hunting season, and a good, berry picking season, and a good fishing season, and a good trading season with other communities. And that's what that was, that circle. And these Crazy Dogs would keep everything in line, and they would have to stick together, as one, as a community, as they grabbed this food and brought it back. And they would sing all night long until the sun came up, and they would feast. And we also, I've heard, on my powwow trail, my powwow journey now, I've met people in a surrounding community that we used to have really close ties to, with the Bagani people, the Blackfoot people. And there's this elder there that I talk with now a lot. I see him all over the trail, and we share stories, and he knows I'm ktunaxa, so it's kind of, he's really, open and helpful and talking with me, and that the stories that he's learned and heard is that our community as ktunaxa people had a really close, relationship with them. And that's, I find that funny how in history books they say all tribes would kill each other, all tribes would, murder each other, and they were savages, and they would rape kids, rape women, and like steal kids and all these things, when not every tribe was like that. There might be one or two tribes like that, but we were living proof that we weren't like that. Not all of us were like that, and we had trading routes, and we gifted the Blackfoot this ceremony, this black-tail dance. We gave them a bundle, because there's a bundle that comes with this ceremony. And we gifted them this ceremony, this way of life, because we wanted to keep that connection, that good spirits between us and the Blackfoot people. And there was also other stories I heard, and we have our own stories, but they're stories that the horses, they run wild in the mountains. And where we live on the outskirts of the Rocky Mountains, and we would actually travel through the Rocky Mountains in the springtime to go out into the prairies to hunt for buffalo. And we traded these horses for buffalo. We traded them to the Blackfoot people. So history is not as what you seem. These people that came over here, they were writing a narrative to depict us as savages, so they could become the land stewards of the land and own it, saying we were unable to because we were we were like basically cave people. That's what they were trying to say. Even though many communities were sophisticated and well flourished and were growing, there was a story that I heard that there was millions of tribes on Turtle Island, and we all lived here for over 10,000 years. And there was none of this, global warming thing. There was none of this, many, depression and suicide and all these things. We lived in life harmoniously, not all the time. But there are stories and trading routes about these things. And then to get back onto the story, this person, this man, when he got old and he couldn't deliver messages anymore, he didn't want to be a burden on people, the people of his community, because he didn't want to be taken care of. So one night he just, packed up his bow and his weapons, and he walked off into the mountains until he left this earth. And I just think that's so powerful that, I was talking about the mountains and all these things behind it. And I'm still learning, all these things. So some things I might share might not be true, but it's just because, that disconnect. So I thought I would just change the tone of this Wealthy Warrior Wednesday. And I thought I would just share a little bit about my culture, a little bit about my ktunaxa people, a little bit about what I've learned on my short journey here in life. And I do feel like, that name, kṱunaxa, really, really plays into who I am today. I'm a man who spreads messages to people throughout this whole universe. So, with that, I'm going to say, on Winnegit Dagas, we will see you next Wednesday, all my wonderful wealthy warriors. And remember, everything always happens for the right reasons. Take care.